I'm a salamander. You can't understand how I lose my limb, and here's a brand new hand. You could grab my tail. I'm not attached to it. Lost it last week. Already regrew it. Born in the pond where my parents spawned, but now I've moved on to the great beyond. Is this land or water? I'm so oblivious. I can breathe anywhere 'cause I'm amphibious. All right, what else? What else you guys? Oh, whale. I'm a big fat female gray blue whale, says sail with my 25-foot wide tail. When I sing my song, every word I say is heard 10,000 miles away. Each day I eat 40 million krill, 4 tons until I've had my fill. My length and width are on top of the list. I'm the biggest creature to ever exist. Let's just see. I have a rooster, but I just wrote a new one for a chicken. So let's see if I can try it out on you guys. Um, Goes like, check it, I'm a chicken just chilling on my nest. Best keep your finger licking hands off of my breast. See, this chick is so sick of your disrespect. Next time you collect my eggs, you'll get pet. I thought we were friends, but this is where it ends. 'Cause I see the way that you treat other hens. I'm a mother. Every other day I lay another egg. So stop staring at me like you're gonna eat my leg. A tuna. All right. I'm that tuna fish on your dish, and I'm pissed 'cause my carcass was packed in that can of Star Kiss. Didn't just catch me, they caught my whole school with some high-tech fishing tool. It was so cruel, they chopped us up for some sushi topping. Please stop, our population's been dropping. Sick of being treated like the chicken of the sea. I hope I poison your family with mercury. A lobster. Um, I'm a lobster crawling on the bottom of the ocean using my antennas to detect any motion. You may have been led to believe that we're red since most folks see us only after we're dead. Split down the middle, I can't help but shudder to think of my brothers all smothered in butter. But I can't blame you. We're tasty, it's true. I'm a cannibal. I like eating lobsters too. Cow. Yo, I'm a cow. Yeah, the kind that you eat. And I'm sick of being treated like a piece of meat. No, I don't got milk for you. I got beef, 'cause I see my brother's blood in between your teeth. Fast food, not grass fed, branded my ass while I watched my family get murdered in mass. And you're squeezing my udders for your butter and cheese? Please, God, give 'em all mad cow disease. I'm a cheetah, the world's #1 speeder, 75-mile-an-hour meat eater, feline fella that'll make the gazelle all run like hell, 'cause they know I can kill. Best climb a tree, you can't flee from me. Going 0 to 60 before you count to 3. I got you beat, can't compete with my heat. Knock you off your feet, then eat your dead meat. Fox. I'm an Arctic fox. I could go for a stroll, though it's a cold day up near the North Pole. Got a warm fur coat, so I don't mind the snow. You won't see me shiver till it's 90 below, but food is scarce out here on the ice. On a nice day, I may find a few mice, not above scavenging for a leftover scrap. If I have to, I'll even eat my own crap. Uh, I see a turtle. I'm a sea turtle, call me a leatherback, 'cause I'm lacking a shell and my skin's all black. Reptile who could freestyle swim for miles, all the way from Australia to the British Isles. Diving deep to 4,000 feet, the only dish I eat is jellyfish meat. I catch 'em myself, so it's not too pricey. Don't mind the sting, I like my food spicy. Let's see, puppy, I just did a new dog, so I'm a domestic dog and my family is mutts. We bark in the park while sniffing dog butts. I'll roll in the trash, dig a big old hole, and then drink a whole gallon from the toilet bowl. I'm a man's best friend, but he's kind of a grouch in the doghouse now 'cause I messed up the couch. I was locked at home all day on my own and I had to pee, so please throw me a bone. Let's see what we got. Mosquito. I'm a lady mosquito, and though I'm little, I'm thirsty for blood, and my mouth is a needle. One bite from me might give you malaria. I'll take flight, leave your family to bury ya. Sneak all around, cause I got a bad streak. Seek blood all my life, which is only a week. Lay thousands of eggs in a stagnant pond. By the time they can fly, I'm dead and gone. Let's see, a penguin. I'm an emperor penguin. Why would I fly? I'm huddled in this cuddle puddle so I don't die. I gotta keep my heat for months. I won't eat while balancing this egg on my freezing feet. It's 60 below. Most fold in the cold. Only 1 in 5 chicks turns 1 year old. And killer whales may eat adults as prey. My wife's out fishing. I hope she's okay. What are we at? Deer. I'm a white-tailed deer, a 10-point buck. Almost got struck by a bullet, but I ducked. Getting chased cause some redneck nutcase wants to hang my head up on his fireplace. So I jumped out in front of his SUV. He swerved around me, crashed into a tree. And it was no accident. I had reason. That's how we get even during hunting season. What's a pig? Well, I'm a big pig, some call me a hog. That fat tub of lard that's smarter than your dog. But I wallow in the mud, so I smell kinda smelly. And I eat a lot of slop, so I got a pot belly. The farmer's been turning my friends into ham, sausage and bacon, salami and spam. I just wanna live, but I don't know how. Even Charlotte's Web wouldn't save me now.
Amazing. Um, Always love your animal raps, Ari. Um,
Thank you.
I think we are ready to get started. Yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Robin. I'm a lead educator at Pearlstone, and I want to officially welcome you to Pearlstone's Shavuot Sojourn, a Jewish agricultural journey. This is an entire week dedicated to ancient grains, farming, and Jewish wisdom. Before we begin, please make sure you're muted. We would also love to see all of your faces out there. So if you're comfortable with it, we invite you to turn your video on. And if you have any questions or wish to join the conversation at any point, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We can also call on you. We'll just see how the conversation flows. So today we will be learning the Torah's views on how we should eat with Ari Lesser. Ari is a singer, songwriter, rapper, spoken word artist from Cleveland. His repertoire is quite expansive, touching on everything from politics to religion to animals. And he will be in conversation today with Rabbi Psachia Lichtenstein, the Director of Education at Pearlstone. Take it away, Psachia.
And co-hosted by Sarah. Thank you, and also thank you, Clara, who's hosting the Zoom room. It was so I really didn't think that we would get animal raps out of you, Ari. And we didn't even ask, and it poured forth from you, as usual. And one of the most interesting parts of that for me is the fact that you do animal raps. Your love for animals shows up immediately in your creativity and your work, and a lot of times the animals that are talking are objecting to being eaten
Well,
in their raps.
yeah, I mean, I try to be honest and get into the animal's head. And if you're gonna be honest about it, that's what they're thinking. They don't want to be eaten. I mean, as much as we like to get all Kabbalistic, we got to elevate the sparks. That thing does not want a knife to its neck to be. It doesn't want to be killed. You know what I mean? That's just common sense of like any creature that feels pain. That's not what they want. So if it was gonna write a gangster rap, that's what it would be saying. You know what I'm saying? Um, so I try to get in each one's head, think about it from their perspective, and and then just rip on people who eat it. um, definitely, obviously, my vegetarianism comes through in those animal wraps because it's really I want to be true to the animals themselves, and I think that's how they would feel about the issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if they wouldn't want to be eaten.
Almost. Although I've gotten in some very heated debates with Orthodox people who say no, that you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong about that, and that actually, you know, there are these sparks in those animals, and if you don't eat it, then that animal is screwed basically, and it's the sparks are just stuck there, and so really you're doing it a big favor by eating it. So, I see where they're coming from. I get that angle, and so I see how from that perspective you could make a case, that you have to eat meat. At the same time, I think it's just from maybe that's like an animal that's like a total tzaddik, but I think your average Benoni animal is not on the level that it's like, yeah, eat me now, let's go. It's not where it's certainly not where I'm holding as an animal. I'm not trying to get eaten.
In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy science fiction book, in one of the books is the restaurant at the end of the universe.
Right,
And
right,
so
right, right.
at the very, very end of the universe, meaning not the end of the universe physically, but right before the universe ends. So they have a time machine that will take you over there, and then there's a diner there, and you eat your meal as the entire universe implodes. So you see the last moment of the universe, and you can go and eat there all the time because it's a time machine. So you just go there and you eat there. And one of the things they have in that restaurant is they've genetically modified cows and animals to have tremendous desire to be eaten. So they actually run up to the table and beg you to eat them. So then there's no moral issue because that's
Right.
really what they want.
Well,
That's
and I mean, I think that's very much in line with how a lot of like Kabbalistic thinkers see the issue is that it's like deep down that animal really wants to be eaten. That's really what it wants. And so you're doing it a big favor by eating it. Obviously that's not my view, at least at this time, uh, but I get it. I get the angle. I can follow the logic. Um,
so Ari, let's see if we can. Well, let's back it up. And
yeah.
how did you arrive at this angle? What is your journey? I mean, I'm just assuming you came out of into creation, eating animals,
I
and
did. I did. I certainly did. So first of all, I guess I should clarify where I'm holding right now. I am essentially vegan during the week, and on Shabbos, Yom Tov, special occasions, I will eat eggs and dairy. So I don't eat any actual animal flesh, but I do eat animal products to sanctify Shabbos and holidays. So that's the level I'm at right now. I've been at different levels in the past, but that's where I'm holding right now. How did I get here? So I grew up eating the works, whatever you name it. I've probably tried it, and definitely did not think twice about eating any sort of meat, kosher or not, when I was growing up, and that at the same time as I was eating any kind of meat, I, from a very young age, loved animals. And one of my favorite things to do was flip over rocks and look at bugs. I had all these field guides. I would identify animals. I would, obviously when I was a little kid, I would kill bugs and do all kinds of weird things that little kids do. But once I even got to, 10, 10 years old, I already was very careful not to, even spiders, I would take them outside and set them free so other people didn't kill them. And so I had this sort of this philosophy of trying to, even animals people don't like, trying to save them. And yet at the same time I was eating meat without a second thought. And I did that up until I was in college. And once I got to college, I was at the University of Oregon, and I was in a class that was called maybe human ecology. I forget what it was called, but during one of the classes, they showed a bunch of footage from a slaughterhouse. It wasn't the main subject of the class, but it just happened like they just showed all this footage from a slaughterhouse, and I'd never seen that before. I'm almost 20 years old. I've never seen what goes on at a slaughterhouse, and it's like, whoa! All it just was like this wake up moment of like, wow, I don't even want to kill a spider, and I've been eating meat my entire life, and that's how you get meat. I mean, obviously I know that I'm not an idiot, but when I'm just faced with it in such a clear way, I can no longer justify my position. I can no longer, I can't just live that lie anymore. And I always say for other people have very different relationship to animals, and they go hunting or they go fishing, and for them killing animals is not an issue. And so I would say for those people there's no hypocrisy for them to eat meat. But for me personally, I realized how hypocritical it was for me personally to eat meat at that point. And so I stopped. Pretty much, that week I stopped eating meat. And I I was vegetarian for a number of years, and then I became a little more extreme. Went vegan, went raw for a little while, but um, that was more for health reasons than moral reasons. Because I totally, like Psakia, you have this beautiful farm with all these chickens and goats and sheep, and I see I have no, I could see myself personally doing that, and keeping chickens and drinking milk. I don't think there's any hypocrisy for me personally eating eggs or eating dairy, but for health reasons, I feel a lot better when I stick vegan. So that's how I've come to this sort of in between place where I don't eat meat, but to sanctify Shabbos, to make Shabbos special, I'll have eggs, I'll have dairy, and I get into it with people on both sides with that position. I sometimes I bump into hardcore vegans who are like, "How dare you eat those eggs?" And don't you know what you're doing with that? With that dairy, you're torturing these innocent cows. And on the other side, I'm Orthodox, and I run in all the Orthodox circles, and they think like, how dare you? It's funny. If you tell whenever you tell somebody, not whenever, but a lot of times, I've had the same exact conversation so many times. So yeah, I see it over and over again. People think they're being so original, but it's the same conversation. They find out I'm vegetarian, and so the first question is asked, like, well, is it for health reasons or is it for moral reasons, right? And the correct answer that they're looking for in the Orthodox world, at least, is it's for health reasons. If you say I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan for health reasons, they'll be like, oh, that's great, wonderful, how nice, how healthy. If you tell them it's because I don't want to kill animals, I actually like have some empathy and compassion for animals, then all of a sudden you're going to get into a really intense conversation with a lot of people about how that is wrong, and that you might think you're being moral and ethical, but in fact you are wrong, and I have the truth, which is that you need to eat this meat and elevate these sparks right now, basically. And I've had different levels of intensity of it, but it's a very similar conversation, and I've had it with many different people. So I think it's so funny that Orthodox Jews, which in so many ways we're so focused on, the spiritual side of things, ethics, morals, the law, over science, over health, in so many areas. In this particular area, health, okay, great. But if you don't try to bring in your moral values over here. That if you want to do it for health reasons, fine. Your doctor said so, great. But yeah. So I think it's a funny thing,
Well,
Sasha,
Ari, my follow-up question to that is, why
yeah.
won't you elevate those sparks?
Why won't? So what I would say is,
What do you have wrong with the sparks, Ari?
I got no problem with the sparks, but if I mean, there's sparks in everything. There's sparks in the plant world. I'll elevate those sparks. Okay, I can't eat everything. All right, I would. None of us can eat everything. There's too many sparks. I would die if I tried to elevate all those sparks. Right. So I'm just gonna pick and choose the sparks I elevate. I'll elevate the ones from the plant world. And you know what? That's a lower world, anyways, according to Kabbalah. That's harder work. So you know what? You're welcome, meat eaters. I'm elevating the sparks that are even lower, and I'll eat some salt sometimes too, and that's even lower. That's the mineral world. I'll elevate those sparks. So for I don't know if people follow this, but in Kabbalah and Hasidus, there's an idea that there's sort of gradations of the soul, that there's like the human, animal, plant, and mineral worlds, and essentially, I don't know. I don't even understand it, but the world of Tohu shattered, and all these sparks fell down into these lower worlds, and by us eating things, it elevates those sparks if we eat them in a kosher way and say a bracha. So that's I don't totally understand the concept, but it is a concept that I cannot argue with. So
Well, it's interesting. The person, he's also has your name, the Arizal.
mhm,
So Ari Zal Mini Zirchana Levracha. So the Arizal, the Ari of blessed memory, and not the Ari Blesser that's here. Um, he's actually the popularizer of the concept of the fallen sparks. So
mhm.
before creation, it's an older part of Kabbalah, but he's really the one that brings it into the space, and um, the chaotic world of Tohu is pre there, and then there's these lights and vessels, and the lights and vessels are like experience and the containers of experience, and the original vessels were only to themselves. In other words, they didn't relate in relationship to the other aspects of creation. So you had love and just pure love without any boundaries, and then your boundaries and pure boundaries without any mixing or inter-inclusion with love. And then you had beauty, but beauty without any sort of care to inter-include any of the other, either love or boundaries. And it goes through each one of the spherot, and they were completely self-contained. And it was too much energy, and they shattered. And those sparks, those broken vessels of that previous world, is what this world is made out of. And those chaotic sparks that are in all of the material world, they get elevated upon being consumed and eaten in this world. And what's
Or
really interesting,
utilized in other mitzvahs too, not
yeah,
just through
so,
eating, but
so
through
through
mitzvahs.
through interaction.
Yeah.
And what's the interesting thing is the Baal Shem Tov describes the spark as a little curled up um, human, um, mm, like little figure, like a seed. And when you elevate the seed, it opens up, unfurls into a human shape. So it takes human form. So it's like a little aspect of humanity that was being drawn into human form. And the Arizal is famous for one of the things about him is that he wouldn't kill any bugs. And I think it's really interesting how
Even
you,
lice. Even lice, it says.
even a mosquito, he wouldn't kill a mosquito.
Yeah.
So it was like this sort of like in the beginning of your story that you were talking about your journey of like not wanting to kill bugs, but then how could I be part of this meat industry?
Yeah.
It's and then you're focused on the sparks aspect, which is all these things are around the Arizal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, you lived in Tzfat, if I
I did.
remember.
I did. My yeshiva is on Rehov Ari, so
And that was his city. So
yeah.
it's very interesting. He also waited in between milk and meat 24 hours. Oh,
Papa,
Shimshon.
it's just I love you so
Oh, you
much.
love me so well? That's nice. This is Shimshon, and this is Benny. Here's Benny wants to say I do. Wow.
Hi.
Hey
Hi.
Shimshon, hey Benny.
Benny is 3 years old.
All right, guys. But you guys got to go down to mommy now, okay?
No.
Mama,
Because
The boys are both in
I
here.
love you and I love you and I love you.
Oh, I love
and
you so much. Mwah. They
Big
unlocked the
pro
door.
love in this session. Don't feel.
Oh. Um.
No,
So
no friends. Lolly, lolly.
oh boy.
No friends.
Oh.
I want
Right.
to do. I
If you
want
want,
friends.
put him on. Come on, buddy. Love you guys. Listen to Mama. You're doing a good job.
So I'm looking at some questions, and I'm wondering that original after you had the like I don't want to kill bugs, I don't want to kill spiders, I bring them out of my house, but then I'm eating this meat. Do you think that the objection was for spiritual reasons, or I'm teasing
So
you?
yeah, I mean, so at that point in my life, I was not on a Jewish journey, I would say, but or at least not at least wasn't aware that I was on a Jewish journey, but I certainly the reason from the beginning, the reason that I didn't want to kill these bugs is because in some ways I identified that there is this life force in them, and I can't even tell you how many days and weeks and years as a child flipping up bricks and rocks and looking at the bugs under them. That was one of my favorite activities as a kid. I'd spend hours in the backyard, every day going out there and just looking for what I could find, like the best thing would be salamanders. I could actually, get there were salamanders in my backyard sometimes, but you only find like maybe once a year you'd find a salamander back there. But when you start to look at all these creatures and these incredible things, and you really see there's life in them. They're not just. It's not just like a robot. They're very much alive, and you can also see that they feel pain too. If you like screw up and you're like playing with one of these bugs and you like accidentally mess up its leg, all of a sudden it's like writhing on the ground in pain. You're like, oh dang, I didn't mean to do that. But so really, when you say was it a spirit? I felt. Is empathy the word? Empathy, like that.
Yeah.
There's this similarity between just like I have this life force in me that animates me. There's also this life force in them, and it felt almost wrong to needlessly end their lives, and that actually gets into another interesting question, which is okay. So, and people bring this one up all the time. Well, what about plants? Right? Plants are alive. So why are you making a distinction between animals and plants? Okay, and there's a couple of different answers to this. Some people are very, very extreme, and they even take this into consideration, and they'll only eat fruit. Right? There's fruitarians. They'll only eat fruit, and that way they're not even hurting plants. They're only eating fruits that are given off by the plants freely, and nobody is harmed in the process. So that's the extreme. That's like the extremist view if you want to do that. But then you could look at it from a scientific perspective and say, okay, well, plants don't have like an essential nervous system like animals do. So an animal, when you kill it or hurt it, it's feeling that pain. It is suffering. Whereas a plant, you could make a case, a pretty solid one, that they don't actually feel in the same way as animals do. You could argue with that. Other people, I've definitely seen other ideas that plants do feel things, but they certainly don't feel it in the same way as animals because they don't have a central nervous system. And I've even seen, vegan or vegetarian activists who will say, if you're going to eat an animal, eat something like an oyster that doesn't have a central nervous system and doesn't actually feel pain, because there are certain animals that don't feel pain. So that's another thing. But since we're here at Pearl Stone, we're talking about the Jewish perspective. There was a great story that I read in the Gemara that had nothing to do with the subject, but I've decided to apply it to the conversation of vegetarianism in Judaism. And so when an Orthodox person asks me, okay, well, what about the plants? Smarty pants. Well, you're killing those plants to eat them. So why is that okay? Right? So what I say is there's this story in the Gemara where the conversation is about idol worship. Okay. And it says, if there's a person who worships a tree, all right, what's the law? If a person worships a tree, the tree is just minding its own business, sitting there, okay? But a person comes along and starts praying to this tree, worshiping it. What do you do? Well, aside from we know what you do to the person. The person is committing, a capital offense. But what do you do to the tree? Okay? Is this tree normally like an idol? If it's just like a statue, then you destroy it. We have a mitzvah to destroy idols. Okay? What about the tree? This is just like a tree. It's growing there. It's alive. So the law is, at least according to this Gemara, I don't know, how deep you want to go, but according to the Gemara, the law was you destroy the tree. You actually, because this person came along and worshipped the tree as a false god, you destroy the tree. Okay, so what about exact same situation, but it is not a tree that they're worshiping, but a cow, right? What if they're worshiping a cow? And the halacha is that you do not actually kill the cow. So what's the difference, right? From a Jewish perspective, what's the difference? In both these cases, there's a person comes along, one worships a tree and one worships a cow, okay? And the law is the tree you destroy, the cow you do not. Why? What is the difference? And so that's where I would bring my case and say, look, clearly, according to Jewish law, an animal life has some higher value than the life of a plant, according to Jewish law, to the point that you're allowed to just kill a plant, even though it didn't do anything wrong, whereas you're not allowed to just kill that animal that didn't do anything wrong, even though it was used in idol worship, in avodah zarah, a very serious offense. So I think that's one thing from a Jewish perspective. You could make that case that nothing against plants. I love plants, but you could make a case that animal life is of a higher order than plant life in a way.
Well, I hear two arguments there. The first one is that it's not killing. I think the first thing that you were saying is that when you're eating a plant, that's not killing a plant. And the life may be ending, but it's not like it's feeling the killing part. It's just.
Well, it's not suffering. It's not suffering. It is killing. It is killing unless it's
ending its life, right?
But it's not suffering. So that's one thing for sure.
And then
the second thing is maybe there is just a something about an animal life that is a higher standard. So if you apply that logic and say, okay, now you're in a situation where you are at you have an animal. There's no idolatry. There's no avodah zarah in front of you, but you got a cow in front of you, and you have a tree in front of you, right? Or you have vegetables in front of you, and you have to make this choice. And you look at these things and you say, okay, I actually can 100% live healthy, sustainably, and survive eating either one of these things. Either one, and I will be fine. I will be fine eating the cow. I will be fine eating the plants. Either one will keep me alive indefinitely. All right? And you have to make a choice. Which one are you going to eat? Every time we eat a meal, we make a choice. Which of these things are we going to eat? And, to me, it's an easy choice. For some of the reasons I've already said, but, I think that even from a very, I think you can make a very traditional legalistic argument that the right thing to do is to eat plants unless it's absolutely necessary to eat meat. And in fact, that goes back to the story in the Torah where this whole idea first comes up, which is right in the Garden of Eden. It says green herbs for food. All the animals ate green herbs for food. Nobody was eating meat in the Garden of Eden, and that was how it was for the first 10 generations in the Torah. That everybody was eating plants. No one was eating meat, and yeah.
It specifically calls out also human beings. It's not just like, animals. The
Say
seems
again.
to, yeah, the plants for food.
Plants for
It
food. Green herbs
clearly
for food.
says plants for food. That's your thing. Plants for food, right?
Plants for food, plant-based diet, right? Now scientists are coming around now. Whole food, plant-based diet. Sorry, the Torah is way ahead of you. That's chapter 1, whole food, plant-based diet, green herbs for food. Um,
Okay,
so
wait, Ari. But
when
and the entire Torah is full of eating animals, cutting them up, and
okay, hold
finishing.
on. You're getting ahead of it. We're still in Bereshit now. Hold on. So we'll get there. We'll get there. But so the next thing along the journey is, where do we get? We get to the how did things change? Why did we ever stop just eating green herbs? So the Torah says very specifically when and why we stopped. And the first time that human beings are given permission to eat animals is after the flood. After the flood, after Noah and his family come off the ark, then God says, and now you're allowed to eat animals. And also at the same time, interestingly enough, just to show you that animals like have this value, God also says, and I'm gonna make the animals afraid of you. So it's not gonna just be like, they're just gonna get blindsided by your like vicious meat. They're gonna have a head start on you. So I'm not gonna just like let them, get massacred by you. But look at that situation. These human beings are coming out of this ark into a world that has just been absolutely devastated. Total world of scarcity, if there ever was one. We can't even imagine anything like this. The entire planet has just been wiped clean. Basically, all the food you have is just the seeds and grains that you were storing up on the ark that you've already been eating for a year, and the animals that you brought on the ark. And so at that point, God says, and now I give you permission to eat animals. And so one perspective, and I'm not saying this is the only perspective, but one perspective is like, you could say, look at the situation, look at the context. When can you eat animals? You can eat animals when there's, a necessity, when there's an issue, when there's nothing else to eat, when there's scarcity. Okay, it's permitted, it's allowed. I'm not gonna, force you to hold by this plant-based diet if there's not that many plants around, right? And clearly any sane person would agree that you should be able to kill an animal if you would die otherwise, right? If otherwise, what are you saying? You're saying that my life is worth less than a fish. Even if it is, I should have the right to fight with the fish to live. So at a certain point, it's just common sense, right? You should be able to eat animals if you would die otherwise, and I 100% would have no issue killing an animal, eating an animal, doing whatever I had to do if it's a life or death situation. It's not a question, and that's not. A lot of people try to make that the argument, and it's not an argument at all, really, because I and very few other vegetarians or vegans would have any issue with eating meat if it was a life or death situation. But thank God, in this world we live in, that is not the situation. We are not living in a post-flood scarcity world. We are living in a world where there is more a food abundance than any time in history, by far. And every single person in Western society is eating things that only kings ate in the past. Even honestly, even people who are like eating out of dumpsters. If you pull stuff out of the dumpster at the grocery store, you're getting food that in the past kings didn't have access to this stuff, because we're getting food from all around the world. We're getting stuff from Australia and things that just would be unheard of. Maybe once in a a year somebody would get an orange, right? Back in Russia, or there'd be whole villages that would use one estrog, right? Because it's just a different game right now. And so at this point, you can't make the case that, oh, if I don't eat meat, well, what'll happen to me? You can't make that case. There's so many alternatives, and really now the science is coming out that not only are there alternatives, but eating meat is not good for you actually. So you could even make a further case to say not only are there lots of alternatives to eating meat, but the meat itself is probably bad for you. I'm not a scientist, but I've looked into it, and there are a lot of connections between many of our um, most deadly diseases, heart disease and diabetes and cancer. There are definitely connections, and more are being found between those diseases and diet. And a big part of the diet is, unfortunately, meat and animal products. So, um, now I don't know. Should we go? Should we now go? Why don't you talk about your point, Sakia, that you were about to go into the korbanos. So maybe we should definitely discuss it because it's important to think about what that's all about.
Well, you're taking a very non-postmodern position. You actually you think that it's wrong, and you think something is right. That's, I'm just
Are you saying I'm like having an opinion instead of just
Yeah,
like,
you're like saying that it's wrong to eat animals and it's right to not eat them. I'm just
well, I didn't say it's wrong. If it's a life or death situation, it's absolutely right to eat animals. That's absolutely
it's like if
correct to
you're
eat
trapped in an
animals in a life or
elevator
death
with one.
situation. Say again?
If you're trapped in an elevator with one for like a week and you need to survive, that's what you.
Yeah, totally. I think that that's the right thing to do is to eat it for sure. So you heard it from me. I think it's right to eat animals in certain situations. Um, so the korbanos is another good point because a lot of people bring this up. So like they're like, so what about these korbanos? Because you can't, at least from a strict halakhic standpoint, you can't argue with you know the written Torah. You can't just say, you have to address this because there's huge segments of the Torah that are all about chopping up animals, basically chopping up animals and burning them on the altar. So there's a few things. One of the interesting things is that in Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, where it's giving all these laws, one of the things it says is it says this, and I now I kind of want to find the verse, but basically it says that it talks about these offerings and these korbanos that you bring, and says, and if you don't do it, and if you just slaughter the animals in the field like you've been doing, then I'm going to consider it bloodshed, right? So, um, so you could say, yeah, korbanos is a different thing because when you're bringing a carbon, when you're bringing this offering, you actually, in that case, you actually are doing mitzvah. You really are doing a mitzvah. It's a commandment from Hashem, and you're actually, maybe that is where you're really elevating those sparks. That's the way to do it. There's this holy temple, the Shekhinah is dwelling there. There's a fire that descends from heaven and like consumes these things, and you're doing this very holy service. And there's a few different ways to do it. One of them is an olah, just like a total burnt
You-
offering, where you don't eat
Ari,
anything. Yeah.
your argument would be that's not what when you're eating a burger and you're picking it up from the grocery store, that's not the scene, right? It's not.
It's not the scene. No,
This
it's
is
definitely
not
it's
like
not the scene. So so that's a good tangent there because so is there any hope for meat eaters in our day, according to me? Not that you care what I think, but is there any hope for a meat eater these days? Like I'm giving you a pretty gloomy perspective on meat eating here. Um, is there a way to do it that's holy, right? Because the Torah seems to say the holy way to do it is you bring your carbon to the Kohen in the base of Mikdash, and he offers it up. And if it's an olah, then it's all offered up. But if it's a shlamim, if it's a peace offering, then he a piece goes on the altar, a piece goes to the Kohen, and a piece goes to the person who brings it. And that is the holy way that you can eat meat, is that you turn it into this service of God, basically, and you bring it to Jerusalem, and it's like a whole ritual that very much connects you to the animal. You got to bring this animal. You got to walk with it there. You have to hand it over. You're very involved in the whole process from beginning to end with this. And then immediately afterwards, the Torah says, and if you don't do that and you keep slaughtering it in the field like you used to, that's bloodshed. Okay. Later on, though, in Devarim, the Torah seems to contradict itself, and it doesn't, because that first verse I quoted you, it says it's bloodshed. According to Rashi, it's not interpreted the way I just interpreted it, which is that anytime you eat meat outside of a korban, it's bloodshed. And later in Devarim, it says very specifically that if you live really far away from the Beis Hamikdash and it's not really convenient for you to go there, and you have a taiva. That's the lashon it uses, a taiva, which I'm not sure you guys all know this word. Taiva is it's like a craving. A taiva in like Chabad Hasidus, a taiva is not a good thing to have. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm feeling a taiva, this is great. No, a taiva is like this feeling that arises in you. But the Torah says if you get this taiva to eat meat, this craving for meat, you're you're too far away. It's just not reasonable to go to the Beis Hamikdash, or in our days, you could say there is no Beis Hamikdash. Then you are permitted to eat meat, although not the blood, and you have to do it in a certain way. So in Devarim, yeah, go ahead.
Ari, but I actually have something that I could add to this. What's so interesting about that verse, and also if people want to comment in the chat or have questions, what's interesting about that verse is the first one is just like what Ari said. If you read it, just the simple shot of it, it seems to be saying you're not allowed to eat meat outside of just a very sacred moment. And then this verse that Ari is saying, it says, if you do have a craving for meat, you're allowed to eat it, not its blood, but you're allowed to eat meat from your flock. And that is actually very interesting to me, just because of my life experience when I raised a flock and now have another flock starting up, but of sheep and goats. It actually says you're allowed to eat from your flock. But actually, if you look at all the verses, it never gives you permission to eat someone else's meat. It never says that, and I'm not saying this is the halakhic interpretation, but it never says you could have a meat store. It doesn't say you could have a meat industry. It just says if you're raising a flock, you could eat the meat. And I noticed that when raising our animals is that there's the female goats and the female sheep, they keep having children. You can't have 100 male sheep running, 100 rams running around. You can't have 100 bucks running around. This is not the way. It will never work out. You just very obvious. So something happens to them, and it's only in that context where you're like, well, either they get left in the wilderness or something else eats them. But the way these animals move through the thing, it's not that all the men survive. It's just not the way it works. So here, it's your flock, and you're allowed to eat from it because there's sort of this sort of understanding when you're raising them that there's some sort of necessity there. But I think it's really interesting how it doesn't necessarily, it's not the way Halakhah, I'm not saying this is the halakhic position on those verses, but the verses themselves don't necessarily ever actually give permission.
I like that emphasis on your. Like I never thought about that, but that emphasis on you're allowed to eat from your flock, but it doesn't extend out from there. That's cool. Thank you. I'm going to use that. But going into like, okay, so nowadays we don't have it.
Well,
We don't have.
that would stop the industry,
Right.
because
Right.
one of the things that was really interesting to me when I was raising the animals, I ate animals previously and I continued to eat them.
Ooh, shame. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry, Ari. I'm
I
so
don't,
sorry.
I really don't. I can't worry about what everyone
But,
does. So,
I have my problems and you have yours. But
yeah.
I don't ever think, I'm not proud of it. But I ate animals before. And then when we started our flock, we made a commitment not to eat meat at all from anything other than what we raised. And what was so interesting is people said, how could you eat an animal that you know? Right? Like, how could you? It was like, you know, the animal, like you raised the chicken, you raised the sheep, you know that we had names, they have names, that we raised them from babies. And there was something, it was completely different. It was like we knew the ram, he grew up, had a nice life, couldn't stay around. There was just this moment, and then we ate him. And I know it sounds, it's just like horrible, but it wasn't a horrible feeling. There was some sort of intimate body connection with the animal, and it then made, I'm just talking about an internal experience. I was like, how could I ever eat an animal I don't know?
Hmm.
Actually, that was the, it changed. It's like, not how could I eat an animal? I could just gobble up animals I never met. Like, how could I do that? And it reversed the, I'm talking about at an emotional level. I don't know if I could argue this out ethically, but on a gut level, it actually changed the perspective.
Yeah. No, I think that is the question. How, and for me, that was my wake up call, is like seeing, wow, like I, I would never, at this point in my life, I really feel like the only way I'm going to eat animals is like the situation you're saying, is if I know it, if I can do it myself, if I can look this animal in the eye and be like, this is, at this point, this is what has to happen. And it's, this is just a situation, there's too many rams on the farm right now. There's no room. So what can you do? But I think, unfortunately, the the world we live in, it's become this incredible disconnect between, uh, not just meat. I mean, all the food we eat, there's a huge disconnect. Also with all agriculture, there's a huge disconnect between what, the food that grows and what we actually eat. But I think with meat, it's especially disconnected, that, this thing that used to be a living, breathing, feeling creature is now just in a styrofoam package with saran wrap over it as like a food unit. And there's, for so many people, no awareness or connection between that and an animal. And, I when I was in yeshiva, actually, there was a number of Bachrim that, it was like a Baal Tshuva English speaking yeshiva, and there was a couple of Bachrim that Yom Kippur they did kaparos, and they could not eat meat after that. Once they just saw, oh my gosh, that's chicken. That's what they saw the kaparos, and then all of a sudden they're serving that chicken, for Shabbos that week. It's like, no, they couldn't do it. They weren't like hardcore vegetarians. It wasn't what it was. But just being faced with, wow, they're like, an actual slaughter has to happen for me to eat this food. That's necessary. That's the only way it gets to my plate.
Ari, for
Uh,
those who don't know what kaparas is, can you explain what that is?
so sure, yeah. Kaparos is before Yom Kippur. There's a custom among some people that you, basically, essentially, people will slaughter a chicken for their soul. Almost, it's like, to atone for your soul, you're going to slaughter a chicken. And I'm not doing that. Maybe Psachia, maybe you could, because I don't do kaparos in the slaughter way. So I'm giving it like a not. Maybe you could give it a better spin than me and make it sound a little better than me. But
I can't.
you
I
can't.
I do kaparas. The Shulchan Aruch mentions that the best way to do kaparas is with a seedling, and to let it loose into the river, and let it,
Really?
yeah,
A
uh,
seedling of like a tree or of,
yeah, like a plant seedling.
really?
And it says, if not, you can use a chicken or money. So
It's so funny that that's what it says, and everybody is like, "All right, chicken it is." Like, uh, So yeah, it's a strange custom people do. I do it with money, which is, you basically say, this, you know, with the chicken, people say this chicken's going to go to death and I'm going to go to a long life of peace. With money, you say this money's going to go to tzedakah and I'm going to go to a long life of peace. Um, so there's this idea, before on Yom Kippur, it used to be that the Kohen would bring this carbon, this offering that would atone for all of Israel. And since that's not happening nowadays, this is sort of a placeholder for that sacrificial atonement service. But it's also happens to be, you know, the only time a year that most people, unless you're a shochet, it's the only time of year that you have to come face to face with, the animal that you're eating the rest of the year. And for some people, they can't do it. They see it and they maybe are like me. They're like me that they love animals. They don't want to kill animals. And when they see that this is what has to happen to eat chicken, they don't want to eat chicken anymore. It's just the natural byproduct of it. Um, so, going back to the idea of like, okay, well, so is there any hope for meat eaters? Is there any way, do we have to just wait for the Beis Hamikdash, for the third temple before we can bring shlamim and do it in a holy way? Or is the only way you can eat meat nowadays in like this, like sin of like craving and not I don't want to say sin, but in a state of craving and
Ari, Ari,
yeah.
tell us what you really think about eating animals. Can you, instead of beating around the bush?
No, so here's what I think. Here's what I honestly think. I think that if you're a person who really has this idea that there are these holy sparks in the animal, and when I'm eating this animal, the whole point of me eating this animal is I'm going to elevate those sparks. I'm going to use the energy that is contained in this animal to strengthen my body, and that will enable me to do more mitzvahs, and that will enable me to learn more Torah. And I'm gonna that's the only reason why I'm eating this animal. I'm not eating it for my own selfish pleasures. I'm not eating it, even I'm not eating it just because I'm hungry, because there's other options for hunger. So and I think in our times the easiest way, because it's very hard to like be on that level, the easiest way to do it in what I think is a semi-holy way, I'll say, is if you only eat meat on on Shabbat, basically. Maybe on Shabbat and Yom Tov. If you only eat meat on Shabbat and Yom Tov, then you could legitimately make the case that you're eating the meat to sanctify Shabbat, which is a mitzvah deraisa. It's a direct commandment from the Torah that you sanctify Shabbat. Not necessarily. Some people say you have to eat meat on Shabbos. I don't buy that. That's not true. You don't have to eat meat on Shabbos. In fact, it says very specifically, if you think that meat is disgusting, then you would not even be allowed to eat meat on Shabbos, because it's disgusting. So I'm not saying meat is disgusting, but personally, it disgusts me. So I would be forbidden to eat meat on Shabbos because it's just gross to me. But if you don't find meat disgusting, and if you have a taiva for it, you have a craving for it, then to me the obvious way to do it is only do it on Shabbos. Because if you're doing it during the week and you're eating meat during the week, you can't really make the argument that I'm sanctifying Shabbos, because you did that on Wednesday. You know what I mean? What's so special that you're doing on Shabbos now? You ate meat on Wednesday and Friday, and you had a little taste of Shabbos there. Well, I mean, you're not really sanctifying Shabbos with it. But if you only eat meat for Shabbos, you make a point to do it like that. I think a good case could be made that what you're doing is potentially a holy thing. You're
So,
trying to
Ari,
what?
I hear actually a nuance there, at least for your position, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to see somebody's allowed to eat meat in Ari's book. Um, but the nuance to me is that it's like you're objecting to the callousness, right? Because like you're saying, okay, yes, if you're like totally holy and this is like in the best, and I get it, and okay, but you're like, it's a life, and you're taking it as if it's like you're just tearing up notebook paper, which also might be a problem, right? Like, but that's not it's not the same thing. I just also want to be conscious to say that the way these sessions have gone is like about an hour, and then we do like a half an hour of Q&A that extends over. But just to let everyone know that we're at that hour mark, so official session is over, and now we're going to start the Q&A.
Okay.
So
Well, I want to say
David,
one thing on that callousness idea because it just brought up that there's a great story about Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi. And this is another. I love this one because once again,
the best story. Please tell it. It's the best.
it's so funny because this I can't even tell you how many times I have lost track how many times that I've gotten into this conversation where if I tell a Orthodox person that I don't eat meat because I have compassion towards animals, they'll tell me that's incorrect, that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like a long-haired hippie who's like stupid, basically, and
Oh, we
that's
didn't get
not
to that. We didn't get to that, Ari. We'll get to that
that's
in
not
a minute.
according to halacha. So people had told me this for years already, and I'm like, well, I don't really care because I'm not gonna. I don't want to hurt the animal, so I don't care what you're telling me. I don't want to hurt the animal. I know that it has life force in it, and I don't want to hurt it. So who cares what you say? So then I come across this story in the Gemara where a calf that's being led to slaughter escapes from the herd, comes up to Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, and hides under his cloak, right? And and Rebbe says,
Rabbi Yehuda
even though this
Hanasi is the one that wrote the Mishnah.
the Mishnah, yeah, big
Codification of the
big
Mishnah.
holy rabbi here, and he basically says, he doesn't have any compassion for this calf. He says, look, you got to go to slaughter. That's why you were created. That's what he says to this calf. You were created just to get slaughtered. Okay? And it says the heavenly court sees this. They see that this is what Rebbe says to this calf. And they're like, well, now, because Rebbe didn't have any compassion, we're going to bring him some suffering. That's what this is. This is the story straight from the Gemara. Because Rebbe didn't have compassion on a cow, they're going to bring him suffering. The suffering was, I believe, 13 years of like really painful. It's unclear exactly what it is, kidney stones, or every time that he went to the bathroom, it was excruciatingly painful. The story it says is that every time he went to the bathroom, his attendant would go feed the animals at that time because when the animals saw their food, they would get really loud. They'd all start mooing. You'd hear it like 3 miles all around. The cows are all going crazy for their food. But Rebbe, when he went to the bathroom, his screams were so loud it would be even heard over that, and sailors out at sea would hear him screaming in the bathroom. That's how painful it is. For 13 years, he had to go through this. 13 years because he didn't have compassion on this cow. And how did it end? I mean, it was only 13. It didn't go on forever because after 13 years, it happened that in Rebbe's house he had a housekeeper who was sweeping up, and she found some like stray kittens that had somehow snuck into the house, and she starts sweeping them out the door, and Rebbe sees it and he's like, wait, stop. And he quotes I think he quotes a verse from Ashrei. He quotes a
I
verse
think
from Ashrei.
it's either mice or it's like baby mice or baby rats or
Oh,
baby
okay.
rabbits.
Okay,
So
so I've heard. Okay, so whatever. There's some baby animal that we normally see as a pest. That's whatever, not supposed to be in the house. And he stops her, and he shows compassion for these, normally say they're rats, even better, like rats, something that people usually have no mercy for, right? And he shows compassion for these rats and says, don't harm them. And then the heavenly court sees. This heavenly court sees it and says, Rebbe showed compassion. Let's end his suffering. So, I don't know how any person can read that story and say that having compassion on animals is not a Jewish value. It just clearly is. I've never heard I've never heard any good explanation to say that it's not with regard to that particular story. So sorry for that. Let's go to questions and discussion and open it up for other people to speak their mind. I know I've been rambling on here for an hour, so you're probably sick of me. So let's open it up.
Yeah, David, feel free to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Sorry in advance about the quality of the video. try to listen to the words. So you beautifully took us to your journey and pointed to the story of creation, the beginning of everything, that the diet, the original diet of human being is being very clearly understood. Eat from all of the trees in the garden. And it's very hard ideas to accept, right? As someone that grew up in this meat world, I want to challenge us even farther. Before the human being, Adam, were told what is his diet, he was told what is his role in this world, which this is "Vayenicheu le'ovda u'leshomra," right? So before the what you eat, there is what you are for. You are for taking care. So I want to challenge us that maybe it's not just about what we eat, it's about how you eat. And I want to ask you, with really true compassion to animals, isn't it better right now in many cases to eat meat or to import food and harm right now a bigger ecological habitat, for life, for wildlife? Because when we're talking about this meat industry, we're talking about the domesticated animals, but there are still all the pristine nature, that all the garden that's still going on. And because I wanted to ask you, what do you think about it? And right now in the world, there are places that human beings reach that their diets for millennia were meat-based because they were not possible to eat their plant-based. And until today, if you will try to get to Alaska, plant-based food, maybe it won't be environmental. So maybe there is no even like a higher way to look at the things, which look at the things in an environmental perspective and not only from vegan perspective. I want to ask you what you think about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So there's a couple of things in there. So one thing is that I think from a environmental perspective, because that's not one of the reasons I address, but from an environmental perspective, there's also a huge amount of science behind the idea that eating meat is much more damaging to the environment than plants. If you look in Brazil, one of the major, if not the major, reasons for destruction of the rainforest there is to expand the range for cattle ranchers. It's direct correlation between destruction of the rainforest and the beef industry, which Brazil is maybe the biggest beef producer in the world. And at the same time, I think it's important what you're saying is true. In Argentina, for example, the issue is soybeans. They have huge genetically modified soybean crops, and they're destroying the rainforest to grow soybeans. So I think it's a fair point to say it's not just about meat on that level. Also if you're buying into the big GMO soy business, that's also very damaging to the natural world. But if you look at the numbers, I don't have it in front of me now, but the last time I checked it, it was something like for 100 and no, maybe like I want to say something like 250 pounds of beef. Maybe that's what you get off of a cow. For 250 pounds of beef, you could grow like 40,000 pounds of potatoes. So if you're talking about just raw food that's going to nourish whatever this many people, you could say it's environmentally irresponsible to be raising meat because you're just taking up that much more land away from the natural world, away from the rainforest, away from these environments where wildlife can flourish. If you're growing meat over potatoes, I mean, what's the ratio there? 250, let's see, 40,000 divided by 250, and I'm not sure if those are the exact numbers, but it is something like that. So it's like 160 times. So for this, it's like 160 times more land is being used per pound of food, uh, if you're talking about meat. So I think that there is a direct correlation between veganism and guarding and protecting that ecosystem, protecting the environment.
Ari, do you think that it's a Jewish, in other words, not Jews are human beings. So regardless of whatever Judaism is and whatever Jews are used to, we still have a human thing that calls us and responsibility. But I'm saying that is for sure. Um, at Jewishness and Judaism, do you think that as a Jew, you have to be conscious of what those choices are? Do you think that there's still a possibility where someone can say, like, and I think we're going to actually try in Tanhum Yoreh's session. Um, he's giving a session about on environmental ethics and whatever, human compassion. Um, one of the things is how come halacha, and we'll cover that more there, but how come halacha can't say, you know what, no more tuna, tuna's finished, you're destroying all the tunas, not as a human being. As a human being, that would be like a decision you'd have to make on your own also, but like if you're Jewish and Jews have values and here's halacha, how come halacha can't say, you're not allowed to have tuna anymore. You just can't have tuna. That's not, it's nothing you're allowed to do. It's an aveira, like as in halacha, like it's not permissible. And what do you think about like the, especially again, Ari has in this session talked about Orthodox people and his conversation with them. Ari is Orthodox. And that's why he has lots of conversation with them. He's not just
I'm not just hating on Orthodox
on them. But one of the beautiful things about Orthodoxy is when halacha says something, in general, people listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is an amazing, effective tool. It's not without no police, no nothing. It's just halacha is this, so I am a Jew, I will do it.
Yeah.
So halacha's failure to be able to say about things like you're wiping a species off the planet, you're not allowed to do that anymore, or you're making these decisions. Where has that failed? That ability, or to say like, no, it's not like this was brought up earlier. It's not okay to have veal. Like you can't trap little baby calves in case, like that's just not, you can't do that as a Jew,
Yeah. So I can't speak to why it's failed, but what I could say is, okay, where is there hope? Where could we find a way? Where could we find some way to actually say, no, this, like, we could make a strong case that halacha should forbid this, right? And I think there's a couple places where you could. Certainly with tuna, this is a bit of a different issue, but there's very high levels of mercury in tuna, and so you could make a case purely from a selfish perspective, saying, you shouldn't eat any more tuna or large fish because there are just very high levels of heavy metals in them, and you're actually risking human life by eating those things. That's kind of a different issue. Another place you could another place that I've thought, and this is beyond the subject of meat, but once you get into genetically modified organisms and pesticides, saying, Orthodox Jews are so careful, so careful about everything we eat. Make sure that has this hechsher on it, right? Make sure that this is approved, that this is kosher. We want to make sure that we're eating only something that's kosher, and really Orthodox Jews have this in them. They want to be really careful about what they put in their body, and it would seem that I've heard about cases where I think Monsanto they spliced frog genes into their tomatoes. Okay, so there it seems like you could make a pretty solid halachic case saying, look, that has non-kosher and it has a legitimately non-kosher animal element in that genetically modified organism. How is that kosher, right? You could, like, couldn't you slap a not kosher hexer on that? Be just the fact that it has frog genes in it. Um, and with pesticide also, I mean that's just poison. So is poison kosher, right? I mean, obviously there's an issue. A Jew can't just eat rat poison, right? We can't just like kill ourselves eating poison. And yet, when you're eating stuff that's doused in pesticide, and a lot of times that's what genetically modified organisms are, because they're genetically modified that they survive herbicide. So you're able to kill all the weeds by dousing the field in herbicide, and these plants are genetically modified that they don't die from that herbicide. So you're eating food that's like covered in poison. Shouldn't there be a halachic issue there? Couldn't you make a case that poison is not kosher? Because um, you know that would seem to be sort of a hole. Unfortunately, I don't think there is much room in Jewish law to say that eating animals in general is not kosher. There's way too much that it's clearly permitted. It's not a question. It's clearly permitted to eat animals according to Jewish law. I don't think that lots of people will say you think that it's unethical to eat animals. I say no. You can't make that case that it's just a blank. You can't make a blanket statement and say eating meat is unethical, because the Torah clearly permits it, especially in Devarim when it says if you have a taiva, you're allowed to eat it. So there, I don't think you can make a halachic case against it. But in terms of diet, I think there are areas where we should look deeper into it and maybe change the law, and say that Jews, it's not kosher to eat poison, it's not kosher to eat things that are genetically modified with frog genes. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that.
So as we begin to close a little bit, I would love to bring this back to Shavuot. For me, Shavuot really feels like this, with our like first fruits, with the bikurim and the bringing of bread. For me, Shavuot really feels like a holiday that's like very much aligned with veganism, even though it has also become a dairy holiday. And I'm just like curious how you see those things interacting, and like how we can sort of like use this time, especially right now, during this Shavuot, to sort of like think about our food choices, and like what wisdom like Torah has to offer us about this focus on fruits and on the plants as being like this high level of nourishment, and both physically and spiritually.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, because we haven't really brought Shavuos into this at all yet, and yeah, Shavuos has become the dairy holiday, right? And really, it's dairy by default. It's dairy by default. It's not that it's inherently a dairy holiday. It's just not a meat holiday, and the reason it's not a meat holiday, at least from what I've read, at least I'm sure there's lots of reasons, but the most famous one that I know is that once we got the Torah, once we got these new laws, then we got all the laws of kashrus and realized, okay, we've been doing it wrong, and all of our knives are not kosher anymore, so we can't slaughter animals. So then, therefore, so we can still have dairy. So it became the dairy holiday. But really, if you look at it, there's nothing about dairy there. It's not about dairy. It's about not slaughtering animals. So it's become the dairy by default holiday. But there is a real connection with this, the giving of the Torah. That moment of giving the Torah was this all of a sudden this temporary hiatus from eating meat, even though it was a short one. So there is a very clear connection between, like Sarah said, between veganism at least vegetarianism and the giving of the Torah. Um, Obviously, you also have the Bikurim. That that's
Yeah, the symbols of Shavuot are those two loaves of bread and then the first fruits basket, right? So and that is sort of the height of the agricultural year. It's
Mhm.
like it's like full yield coming in and first fruits, and it's not it's not animal based, which is
Mhm.
it's telling. There are animal sacrifices because, like we said before, animal sacrifices are everywhere
Every
in the
day,
Bible.
twice a day. Let's do it, Talmud. Yeah. No, it's a great holiday. It's a great holiday, and clearly eating meat does not need to be a part of it. Um, so I don't know. I feel like I've said a lot. I don't want to um, keep rambling on if people are getting bored or whatever. But if anyone has any other questions, happy to answer them or discuss whatever you want. But
I just want to clarify that my point, I'm of course environmentalist, and I use also I used to be a vegan.
mhm,
Now I'm shifting towards what exactly I'm talking about, because what I meant is that when we are pointing to veganism, we are still pointing to the symptom and not to the problem itself. So
mhm,
once you will tell people, and if you will make it a new kosher law, don't eat the tuna, the human being will find other species to abuse,
mhm,
whether it's animal or plant. So the question is how we uproot the abusive relationship in first place. And and I see how our wisdom pointing to a truth and Messiah moment of veganism, which includes no harming at all in a way. But right now, I'm asking if pointing to pointing to another symptoms, it's not just avoiding the truth which lays at the moment of the choice. And therefore the kosher laws shouldn't be specified anymore about what to eat and not to eat, or maybe two, but also and also the kosher laws are also how to eat, right? We got like how to raise the animals, and also how to slaughter the animal in a way. So maybe the kosher laws, like the expansion has to be like how we in general creating a food ethics, which including right now also the veggies, because if we understand, like as I understand the story, without eating meat, human being wouldn't get to every pieces in this planet Earth, right? But now we are 8 billion people and we are here, and there is other components in environmentalism, such as local. The food has to come local, right? So to create plant-based situation in the ages of the. So if you can grow your food local in a way which naturalize back with the garden, maybe it's the right thing to do. So this is all what I try to say. Of
mhm.
course, if we're looking of rule of thumbs, yes, veganism right now it's maybe better in the current specific situation than uh, eating animals, but this is just a reductionist method of looking at truth. It's just like, okay, right now the meat industry is more harmful, but um, still, if we want the people that won't eat meat because this is what they will think, in my opinion, they will still keep being harmful for you for the entire creation, because they're still going to take care only on symptoms rather than the problem itself, fruit of knowledge, good or bad at the moment. This is my
So
clarification for my point.
yes, so I think I think it's a good point, and if I would say just veganism is not the answer, and in some ways maybe it is just addressing the symptom, and if you wanted to get to the deeper core, and for me, it's like the reason behind and the thing that really we have to work on is, in my opinion, is compassion. Because if you're vegan, but you still have no compassion for other life forms or other people, then what good is it? You're just a callous, cold-hearted person who eats vegetables. Like, what good are you doing to the world? So I think that really maybe, and honestly, even the whole environmentalist angle, that's one of the reasons I didn't really bring it up. I think you can make this incredible case why, according to environmental science, really the world needs to go vegan. If the world went vegan, we'd have some serious hunger issues that could be avoided right now. Unfortunately, I saw 10 countries that are at risk of like extreme food shortages, because of a combination of locust swarms and coronavirus. And really, I think you could make a very good case, that for of environmental reasons that meat is just not ethical. But at the same time, like you're saying, you're just maybe just addressing this symptom, and what really we should be focusing on is compassion, both for the people who are hungry and for the animals themselves. And that until we address that issue, that underlying issue of like, are we going to have compassion? Are we going to have love for each other and love for Hashem's creations? What good is being vegan? What good is doing any of this stuff if you don't have that underlying love? And on the flip side, if you have that compassion, then it naturally leads. If you have real compassion, like that's what happened to me. I have compassion. I have compassion for the spiders. I have compassion for the animals. And even though it took a while for my practice to catch up. It took me a while to realize I was being hypocritical. But since I have that underlying compassion, it just led me down a path of a vegan vegetarian diet. So, and in a sustainable way too, because some people might try to take on something, but since they don't have that underlying thing, all they're doing is like you're saying, they're just treating some symptom, and they're not really changing the underlying cause of the issue. So
We actually have a question from Josh,
okay.
and now we have a question from Damien, and then I think we can conclude.
Okay.
So just real quick, it's more of a comment on just kind of the past conversation, but I think it's really amazing. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is about like how we find meaning through prayer and Psalms, to kind of environmental action and thinking about welfare for animals. And the first Psalm we say, at least in the Ashkenazi tradition, but it comes along as the start of Sukkot Zimra, Baruch She'amar, is this active Baruch Osev Reshit, that God is actively Osev Reshit that is creating, and Baruch Omer V'Oseh, Baruch Merachem Al Haaretz, Baruch Merachem Al Briot. So there's this active compassion on the earth and on all of creatures. Briot in this case seems to be referring to all of creatures. And then it ends, this is the start of our praise. So who is a God that's worthy of praising, that's worthy of emulating, is a God that it gives compassion. And the same bracha that ends Baruch She'amar is the same bracha that ends Hallel. So there's the Baruch Atah Hashem Melech No'olam B'Tishbachot. So there's this essence of being worthy of praise as someone who's compassionate. And if we want to have sincere prayer and sincere connection, this isn't halacha, but in terms of our own personal spiritual lives as Jews, there's something we said about that too.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Give me some good kavana for tomorrow morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Josh, now you're just egging him on. You're just
Blessed is the one who spoke and everything came to be. Blessed is he. Blessed is the one who speaks and does. Blessed is the one who decreed and it was. Blessed is the one who makes the universe. Blessed is the one who has mercy on the earth. The one with compassion upon the creations, who gives those who fear him good compensation. Blessed is the one who will always be alive, who exists for eternity. Blessed is the one who redeems, who came to the rescue, and blessed is his name. Blessed are you, Hashem, O King, our God, who rules over everything. The Godfather of compassionate ways, who fills the mouths of his people with praise. Exalted and glorified by the tongue of his servants and by his pious ones, and with the songs of your servant David. Hashem our God will praise you indeed with songs of thanks while the music plays. Will declare your greatness, proclaim your praise, tell of your beauty, announce your reign. Our King, our God will remember your name, Yahid, the one and only thing, the life of all the world's a king, whose great name shall receive glory and praise for all of eternity. Blessed are you, Hashem, the King, who shall be praised with thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ari. Damien.
Hi.
Hey, Damien.
So some things were said that got my brain thinking about to really stop the destruction, of our planet. That being veganism isn't the sole, thing to fix it. That like people have already said that it's going to take compassion, and one thing I was thinking about is the excess use of everything. And if people eat meat and they eat it in moderation, and if most people can get on board, that'll make a huge difference. And how can we try to incorporate, go out in community and plant seeds? And I was thinking, there's the local Boys and Girls Club presenting a curriculum that can work for such a public space where a lot of people don't know about Judaism and stuff. So, but presenting something like that, and then that's a good platform to teach, to honor life, and to show other ways of eating, because there's a lot of people that I didn't know, but I came to find out that don't even know sometimes what basic fruits and vegetables are. I was just in Arkansas, and there's some people that really aren't familiar with cilantro, different vegetables and fruits. And so going that way, teaching people the other ways, and then encouraging them and planting those seeds and teaching, maybe putting it in a way that can be understood in that platform. So you're not like really preaching at people, but to say, I don't know, in a tactful way, not to pursue pleasure, and in moderation will help all life in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, good points, very good points. I've come across so many people. One of the most common questions that I'm sure lots of vegans have dealt with this one, not just in the Jewish world, but anywhere. You tell someone you're vegan, vegetarian, they're like, "Well, what do you eat?" Like people are not, they're not doing it in a mean way, not doing it sarcastic. They're like literally, like you're saying, they just aren't exposed to a wide array of the options that are out there. They just don't know about it, and they've just grown up eating whatever bologna sandwiches, and they don't understand how, like, they can't wrap their head around, like, well, what do you eat? The people who are a little more like scientific, they want to be like, well, where do you get your protein from? But some people, the question is not even that. It's just like, well, what do you eat? I don't understand. And like you're saying, the answer to that is not to preach to them. It's to show them all these amazing, delicious foods that are out there, and cooking is a big part of that too. Once you decide to, for sure, once you decide to keep kosher, whether you're vegan or not, and especially if you're vegan vegetarian, then it's really essential that you learn how to cook, because otherwise your diet is going to be extremely limited. And I think that's an incredible thing that so many people in this world could benefit from, is just learning about different foods, learning ways to prepare them in delicious recipes. And on your point also about eating meat in moderation, I think that Judaism does provide this incredible system that can be ingrained very easily, which is what I mentioned before about sanctifying Shabbat. You can actually turn that idea of eating a limited amount of meat, you can essentially turn it into a mitzvah, because there is this mitzvah of sanctifying Shabbat, of making Shabbat special, making Shabbat different than the rest of the week. That is like an actual real mitzvah. It's a commandment of the Torah. Hashem commands us to do it. It doesn't have to be done through meat, but if you don't eat meat all week long, and then once a week you're like, okay, now this is Shabbos. Ah, for the sake of Shabbos, I'm gonna eat this meat. It's not that you're eating the meat for some selfish pleasure. You're eating the meat for the sake of Shabbos. But the best part is that because it's Shabbos, even if you do fall into that taiva, even if you do fall into that grub low level of like, oh, meat, I'm craving it. From what I understand, at least Kabbalistically, Shabbat still elevates it. Even if you're like this lowly person who can't elevate meat during the week, on Shabbat you don't have to worry because it's Shabbat. It's just gonna elevate. It's gonna elevate it.
Ari,
Yeah.
I think there's another 7 hours
Okay.
of we didn't even talk about Yosef's bones and vegetarianism.
Well, that's why the class is about to start now. It's going to be a 19-hour discussion about Yosef's bones, and we don't have an answer at the end.
I'm still not, Ari, I'm still not convinced that having compassion uh, on beings is a good thing. But maybe you could convince me more. I'm just kidding. But Ari, thank you so much. How can people get a hold of you online?
Well, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm Ari Lesser, and I post mostly on Facebook's probably the main spot I'm on, but I definitely get out there. If you type my name into YouTube, then you'll find all sorts of stuff. I got CDs on Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, all the main platforms. If you type my name in, you'll definitely get some good tracks. So yeah, dig in after Sphere is over here. Some people are still not listening to music yet, but after Shavuos, it's on. You can listen to anything you want. So
I heard that you also don't cut your hair during the Omer.
yeah, no, I mean it's getting a little long. I cut it right before Pesach, but it's just keeps growing, man. So
So,
um,
Ari, thank you so much, and thanks everyone who joined us today. We have just a beautiful kavanah for like going into Shavuot and thinking about how we sanctify our food and what we're putting in our bodies and how we make it holy. So it's really beautiful. There are many more exciting speakers in our Shavuot Sojourn, and we would love to see all of you there. Our next lecture is tomorrow morning, tomorrow at noon. Exactly at noon, Ancient Land Stewardship and the Future of Just Economics with Justin Goldstein. You can register for any and all of our sessions at our website, pearlstonecenter.org/Shavuot 2020. Thank you so much.
yeah.
And
Definitely good to see. This gives me a little taste of Pearlstone Shavua, so I really appreciate seeing all of you guys, and it's gonna give me some good vibes going into the holiday. Even though I'm gonna be here with just my crazy little kids, it's gonna be. I'll have you guys all in my heart while I stay up all night with them instead of you. So. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for hanging around and chatting afterwards. And yeah, everyone, Chag Sameach should be the best Shavuos until the next one at Pearlstone. So.